I wanted to start just with you telling me what you already know, basically. What do you know about human design and your type and all of that specifically, other than what I share, if there's anything additional besides what I've shared with you already?
Yeah, so I do know I'm a 2-5, and that's just because I've run my chart to see what my numbers were, but
Mhm.
it's like a whole different language. Um, but then I've watched some videos that explained what the 2-5 meant. That was just a very, very simplified version of it, of like the heretic and the hermit. And just from that alone, it validated how I process internally, needing to isolate, needing to feel recharged, why home is so important to me, and why peaceful home is like super important for me to be able to create here and connect. And I invite people to my home uh, instead of like, I don't want to be out because it exhausts me and drains me to be outside of my home. Um, and then coincidentally enough, when I run my birth chart, my fourth house about my home, my roots, my family, and ancestors are very dominant in my chart too. So it's kind of cool to see like both sides of it.
Yeah, they're complementary. I don't think that's a coincidence at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, other than that, like I know I'm a manifestor generator, so I've kind of read up on that, but it's still like a second language.
yeah. And a lot of like the general descriptions we see online, like they give you very like surface level information because you can go so deep with this. Um, but there's more nuance when you dig in and start looking at the energy
They're
centers.
like all those tiny little
Yeah,
numbers
all
and
the little shapes and the gates and channels and all that. So today we're going to talk about the energy centers, the 9 shapes. So here's your chart. These colored and white shapes, this is what we're going to talk about today. We won't spend a lot of time on the gates and channels. That's a whole other like level of depth in reading, but there are some like this one right here we'll talk about just a little bit because that's important to know, related to emotions, and this one we'll talk about as well. But this is primarily focused on the 9 centers so that you know, um, where you're putting out energy into the world and where you're taking in energy and potentially taking in conditioning as well.
ooh,
So you are, as you said, 2-5 manifesting generator. Manifesting generators are multi-passionate people who are here to do and accomplish many different things. So you have a lot of interests, a lot of hobbies, a lot of career paths. You are not necessarily meant to have one job, one role, and that's the one thing you do until you retire. Like,
it's so validating.
and as soon as something, we'll talk about opportunities that light you up in a little bit, but as soon as you lose that light and you're no longer like on fire and glowing for an interest, it's okay to just put that aside and walk away. It means you're done with that and it's time to move on to something else.
Got you.
Um, so in your chart, all of your defined centers, the colored areas, are all connected to each other. You can see how it flows here and then connects here, here,
Okay.
and then goes through this way. So
Oh, I see.
see that?
Okay.
So we call that single definition. It means there's a smooth, consistent flow of energy between your defined centers. And practically speaking, what that means is you most likely, can process new information, new situations, new people pretty quickly and smoothly. Um, and it also means that you process that better alone a lot of times. Like when you're on your own, you
Hmm.
don't, if there were a gap here, like let's say these were not connected and you had these 2 centers connected and these 3, then there would be this like yearning almost just to be around other people. Like
Oh,
you need to sit in a coffee shop in order to process this information because you're looking for an energy to bridge that gap. You don't have that gap. You have the smooth flow. So being around others can actually distract you from processing. Sometimes being on your own is really ideal, like with new information, new changes, new people, anything that's new that you need to take in. It's
yeah,
better for you on your own to be doing that. Uh,
absolutely.
your strategy, see, there you go, there's a typo. Your strategy, Jin, decision making.
It's just a fancy eye.
um, is to respond to opportunities that come your way rather than forcing things to happen.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So you have emotional authority, which is this center here in your solar plexus, with the secondary being a generator, you have this secondary sacral authority, secondary sacral authority. And we'll talk about how those two play out in a little bit. But the key takeaway here is to know that you have two different paths to your inner knowing, to know what decisions work for you. And one may be more appropriate for bigger, emotionally heavy, weightier decisions. And the other may serve you in the day-to-day. What am I going to eat today? What do I want to do? Do I want to exercise? There's another way you can use both of those and integrate them together to make your decisions. You actually have a third one that we'll talk about with your identity center.
Sorry.
You actually, so I was saying you actually have a third one with your identity center here being connected to your throat, where you can also just talk out decisions to hear them out loud and see how it feels in your body. So you have three different things you can rely on, not your mind, not thinking out pros and cons, just your inner wisdom, inner knowing. You have three different ways of accessing that.
That's cool.
To know how you know you're living in alignment with your design is a feeling of satisfaction. When you're not in line, it's frustration. For different types, it means different things. For me as a projector, it's bitterness. I get really bitter and resentful when things aren't working right. For manifesting generators, it's more frustration. And when you feel that frustration, it's an opportunity for you to pause and kind of reassess what in your life is not in alignment with where you need to be.
Got it. Okay.
Your centers. So like I said, this is going to focus primarily on your defined and undefined centers. That's the main thing we're talking about. And your centers tell us where you put energy out into the world and then where you're taking it in. These defined, they're called defined centers, the colored in areas. Different graphs may have them in different colors. The colors aren't relevant. When you see the ones with like a green and a red and a brown, you don't worry about the colors on those. What matters is whether it's colored at all or whether it's white.
Okay.
The colored areas are where you have consistent access to that specific energy, a consistent way of processing that energy, and it's also the energy that you're putting out into the world that other people with open areas will be taking in. And your undefined, these white spots here, 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 these are where you take in energy from others and amplify it before releasing it. So these are the areas where we have the potential for the greatest wisdom, because there's no one fixed way of processing the energy in that center. You're taking in, it's like you're sampling little bits from everyone on how they process and how they work through different energies and gaining wisdom from that and from that information. But because you're taking in from everyone and sampling, those are the areas where we have the potential for the most conditioning and most likely to be out of alignment with our own natural being, our own home base. It often happens through the open centers. So we're going to talk about both, because I think, to me, knowing your defined centers is important, so you know what your neutral home base energy is. So that when things are out, when things feel frustrating, when things feel out of alignment, you know what it should feel like, and then you can evaluate the open, undefined areas and figure out where are things not quite clicking, so that I can get back into my flow, basically.
That makes sense.
Okay. Let me check my note. Okay. One other thing about a manifesting generator for you specifically with a 2-line. Manifesting generators in general are really great at efficiency. They're really, really great at looking at, this is the way something's been done, and saying, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. We're not going to do it. We're going to do it this way instead. And it's more efficient. For you as a 2-line who is naturally gifted at many things, this means that you don't necessarily, like, the equivalency between a lot of time on a subject equals mastery on a subject, that doesn't necessarily ring true for you.
I feel that way.
Good. Your 2-line combined with being a manifesting generator means that you can master things a lot more quickly and efficiently than other people, because you are both innately good at a lot of things and innately good at seeing how to do it efficiently. So this whole like 10,000 hours equals mastery concept in our culture is not true for you specifically.
I have been seeing 333 a lot. and Shannon looked it up. She's like, oh, that's the number of mastery. This was like 2 days ago. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And then that's funny. Okay.
Mastery is one of your gifts, basically, with your being both manifesting generator and a 2. You don't need a lot of time. And who cares? If someone says, well, you've only been doing this 6 months, you can't be good. No, that's bullshit. You can't be good doing it just 6 months. You can master it. You specifically can master it, you know? Okay, so now the solar plexus. Do you have any questions about any of that first?
No, not yet. Nope.
Okay. I'm kind of moving quickly because I know this could potentially be like a 2-hour thing, but if any questions come up, just chime in, okay?
Nope. Perfect.
Okay, so you have a defined solar plexus. So that's this little triangle right here. And the solar plexus is the home of emotions and our emotional and social connections. It's the home of our emotional expression, passion, artistic nature, and romantic bonding. Not sexual, not physical, but the romantic inner connection, emotional connection lives in the solar plexus.
Oh, I do have a question. So are they sort of coordinated with like the chakra? So is there like a root chakra? And
okay, so there are 9 centers with human design. The explanation that human design gives is that we were 7-centered beings, and that was in line with the 7 chakras. And around 1781, with the discovery of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, further planets that can influence our chart and design, we evolved to be 9-centered beings.
That makes sense.
So the sacral and spleen are kind of tied together in the sacral chakra, and the heart and identity center are connected through the heart chakra as well. But
okay.
It's loosely based, not loosely, it's based on the 7 chakras, but with this idea that we had more information, there's more influencing our chart than what we knew before. So the concept kind of evolved to accommodate that.
Totally makes sense with like consciousness and
yeah, totally. And this emotional awareness in the solar plexus is our newest form of awareness as human beings. And it's 50% of the planet is defined and 50% is undefined. So 50% have this consistent emotional access, and the other 50 are kind of absorbing that and sort of taking it in.
Oh, wow.
Complemented together. So with a defined solar plexus, you are always surfing the waves of your ocean of emotion. So I like this metaphor. I like this imagery. Think of an ocean, and someone's like sitting out on their little boat, riding the waves. Might be a big wave that comes in, might dips. Your goal is to remain calm while riding the waves of the boat. Recognize that they're there. They're there to inform you and to give you information, but you're not going to be overtaken by them.
Okay.
Your personal wave, it's this channel right here. This one right here tells us that your personal wave may feel like peaks and valleys, like you may feel really high highs and really low lows as you ride out that wave. And though that wave itself, those emotions may be triggered when your desires, your expectations of people, scenario are not met. That could trigger an emotional response. So your strengths as a defined solar plexus, you have an incredible depth in your ability to understand the emotional nature of things, not just the logic and reason, but the emotional side of things. And in a healthy state, you're able to feel these feelings, ride out that wave, let others feel theirs as well, without feeling pressure to make sense of the emotions, to label them, to have a reason, explaining why they're there. You can accept that these emotions exist, they're part of my nature, and I'm just going to ride them out, not to be overtaken by them.
Gotcha.
So your challenges in this area are impatience or impulsive decision-making. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to go through these and then we'll come back to that. Reacting when emotionally charged, like hitting that peak and being really excited and responding, or being really angry and blowing up and regretting it, or getting really excited about an idea and committing to it right away without fully thinking it through and then realizing later it's not actually for you. Like the emotional charge, responding, reacting, deciding anything while at the peak of that emotional charge can be challenging. Also bottling up your feelings or not allowing yourself to feel at all, just completely detaching and disengaging. and avoiding a decision altogether and just letting the wave continue to repeat itself. And you could be avoiding for different reasons. You want to avoid a confrontation, avoid a fight, whatever it is that's causing you. It means that wave will just keep repeating itself and repeating.
I call it distorted earth sign energy, because it's like earth signs are fixated and they can hold on to things a lot longer than necessary and just keep going and going and going until something has to until something cataclysmic has to push it out of the way almost.
Yeah. So this is considered when you read about strategy and authority, your authority, what they say officially, you have emotional authority, which would mean that any big emotionally charged decisions, give yourself time to ride out that wave and return back to a place of neutrality before actually committing to a decision.
Okay.
Now, for someone like you with this, and this, 3 of the 4 motor energy areas defined, it can be really hard to wait out every decision for 2-3 days and to ride that wave. You'll feel the buildup of energy and feel like, I just want to get going. I want to do something. I need to know an answer and I want to go. For super emotionally charged decisions, this is where this impatience and impulsive decision-making comes in. Try as much as you can to be patient with those emotions and let them ride out before actually committing to it. For smaller, everyday decisions, you don't have to wait 2 days to decide if you want tacos or a pizza for lunch, right? That's where the sacral response can come in, that we'll talk about next after we finish up solar plexus. So some tips for supporting your defined solar plexus. Allow your emotions to be present without a need for explanation. This is how you were built. You are built to be an emotional person. Those emotions are good. They're part of who you are. They inform you. They enrich your life. They're not something you need to explain or hide away or justify or logic through. Give yourself time with emotionally charged decisions. Know that it's okay. Giving yourself time is the right thing to do in that moment. And I have down here, have go-to responses when an emotional decision is needed. If someone else is saying, I need a decision, can you answer this, commit to this? Have some go-tos like, I'm really excited by this opportunity, but I want a night to sleep on it. Something that you can say that gives you an out so you can relieve that pressure to make an impulsive decision. Use physical movement, massage, Reiki to release trapped emotions. If you feel yourself bottling things up and just like ignoring the emotions that are there, those are ways you can release it and get it out and, finish out that wave. And feed your need for emotional experiences. So your wave, you have 2 things going on here with this channel. Let me look at my notes that I wrote down. We were going to talk about this more in the root, but we can talk about it now. You have between your 41 and your root, you have a desire for new experiences. And in the 30, it's a desire to feel new emotions. So you're essentially seeking out emotional experiences, whether it's in movies, shows that you watch, whether it's activities, whatever it is, you're driven to seek out experiences that will allow you to feel these emotions. So giving yourself permission to do that, feed that need for emotional experiences, that's okay. If you're feeling like you really want to watch a cheesy, stupid romantic comedy, no matter how much you hate those kind of movies, but you just want to live in the feels, let yourself do that. That's okay. That's a way of supporting your solar plexus.
Beautiful.
So some reflection questions, just to think about, what does my emotional wave look like? What are the highs? What are the lows? Just so you can learn to recognize it. And so you can recognize this opportunity came up, but I know I'm in the peak of my wave. So I need to ride it out, because if I commit to it right now, it may not actually be what's right for me. And also, what would it look like to wait for emotional clarity? What other forces, what around you or internally might be causing pressure that makes it difficult to wait out the wave? Other people demanding a decision, you feeling like you just need answers and you need to commit to this just to have it done and have the decision made. That could possibly be a possibility. But kind of reflect on that, so you know that when those things come up, when you start feeling that pressure, you know what it is and you can move through it. And some affirmations. My emotions are a strength, not a weakness. I embrace the full spectrum of my emotional wave, the highs and lows. We're like culturally trained to pursue happiness at all times. And if you're feeling down or depressed or frustrated or scared, that's a bad thing and there's something wrong with you. That's not true. The full spectrum highs and lows are all meant to inform. There's no good or bad. It's just information and awareness, and allowing that to exist relieves that pressure of, but I'm supposed to be happy all the time, you know?
Right.
I know clarity comes with time. That's related to your emotional decision making. I'm here to be deliberate, not spontaneous.
Oh, I love that.
And I enter opportunities purely for the experience with no expectation on the outcome. This is one of the things, that need for emotional experiences can drive you to do something that you put this expectation that it's going to be so great and so amazing and so awesome, and then it doesn't live up to that and it throws you into a low. So embrace experiences just for the experience.
Okay.
Sorry, I need a lot of water now.
This is awesome. Thank you.
A few other things I noted. If you're around undefined solar plexus people, which I don't remember for sure, I think Ezra might be undefined, but I don't remember for sure. There's a 50-50 chance you're around someone who's an undefined emotional solar plexus.
Okay.
They will feel your energy, take in your energy, and then amplify it. So if you're in this emotionally chaotic place, you may notice other people around you are kind of meeting that chaos with their emotions because they're amplifying whatever it is that you're feeling.
Yeah, when it's class time, and if one of us between, you know, like if Zanaya is having an off day, it will throw like dominoes. It'll hit Ezra, and then it gets to me, and then by the time I've had it, it's like, why are you so upset? And I'm like, it's like, yeah, amplified. I can feel, I'm like, all of this throws me off.
Yeah. And to understanding these energy dynamics now, when we're all stuck at home all the time with each other, is such a great tool to have. So you can be able to say, I understand what's going on here. It's our emotional energy. It's not personal. We don't need to take it personal. We don't need to overreact. We all need to calm down, and then we'll come back together, you know?
We are, yeah.
Yeah. Your wave can't be controlled. So some people hear that they have this emotional wave and they think, oh, I need to rein it in. I need to control it. I need to not let it get out of control. It's going to happen whether you know it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. It's there.
When it happens, it feels like, what do you remember? Well, yeah, you have a newborn now. You remember contractions?
Yeah.
Like, of just the experience, it feels like a wave going through, like blue, but then it also, like, there's no control. You literally just have to surrender to it.
Yes.
And let it do what it's supposed to do, and let it go through. And that's exactly
great analogy. That's exactly.
when I hit my moments of you know, crazy emotions, not necessarily like the excited ones, but like, you know, when they're the harder ones, I have to like not fight the tears. Like, I just have to let them be. If there's tears, there's going to be tears. If it's just going to be anger, I just have to let it, like, I literally use the visualization of sitting on the rocky shore, and like, depending on how much, so yeah, just to validate what you were saying, like, that's exactly what I use when I'm going through.
Yeah, and let yourself just go through that without any judgment on it or need to explain, oh, I feel sad because this happened. No, sometimes you just feel sad, and that's okay, you know? So with your emotional authority, with your solar plexus defined, the other thing I wanted to point out is that it can bring clarity, but it can't necessarily bring certainty. So it can bring clarity to you around the decision you want to go, but you may not feel, yes, I'm 100% certain that this is going to work out exactly the way I want. You won't have that certainty. You never will till you actually experience it. And I bring that up and note it specifically for you because you have an undefined ajna. And when we get to that center, a key thing about the center is it wants certainty. It does not like confusion and doubt. It wants to be certain. So understand that emotional clarity is not the same thing as certainty. Certainty isn't really attainable. Clarity is.
Okay.
Okay, now to the sacral. This is your secondary decision-making authority. And this for you as a generator, this is what makes you a generator. If you did not have this area defined, you would be a manifester. This is a very like key center, and it's what defines you as manifesting generator versus just manifester. So the sacral center, it's pure energy. There's no awareness there. It's a pure physical, in the moment, bodily energy. It's the home of our sexual energy, vitality, fertility, not just fertility like kids, but birthing ideas, birthing projects, and creativity. It's where we find pleasure, not sexual pleasure. Yes, sexual energy, but pleasure just in life, pleasure in your senses, things that feel good to touch, good smells, good food, that all like comes from the sacral. And the sacral teaches us.
Sign.
Yeah.
Earth energy.
So the sacral teaches us, since one thing, side note, since you know astrology so well, I'd be really curious how things match up when you pull your full graph. You know how they have the 2 rows of columns that
I was thinking about that.
It shows you where the planets are in specific areas, specific channels and centers. I'd be really curious to see with yours, like where there like actual overlaps between your planets.
Yeah, I'm curious on like how that they work together, because even like it's like, you know, speaking another language, but I'm translating it in my mind of what that looks like in a birth chart, and how that defines like the energy that goes towards dealing with other people, or like the pleasures. Like just last night, because I was kind of doing my preparation on my end of looking through like my birth chart again and seeing how much earth energy I actually have. And I'm like super fixated energy, but it's like pleasures, senses, like major stuff going on in my house that's all about Taurus, which is, you know, where food and sex and
so besides your solar plexus, this is the second most important center for you, really. And the wisdom of the sacral is that life is meant to be pleasurable and work is meant to be pleasurable, and that it's possible to find joy and pleasure and fulfillment through the work that you do. So you are here to be filled up, literally satiated by life. You have, this is life force energy. You have that life force energy, and you radiate it to the world and fill others with that energy as well. In human design, they talk about this doing what lights you up. So to me, I see this as you're here to be a light. You're here to be lit up by what you're doing and shine that light so that others can find theirs as well.
I love that.
Challenges here, exhaustion and burnout can happen if your energy is focused on something that does not actually light you up. Even though you have the energy for something, it doesn't mean it's right for you. One of the things we're going to talk about is the sacral response. So this is what you would use in making your decisions in a lot of ways. It's a very immediate, in the moment. Sometimes it's in your body. Sometimes it comes out as like, it's the most simplest explanation for it is a uh-huh or uh-uh. Do you want to go on a hike today? Uh-uh. Do you want to swim? Uh-huh. That's like, it's immediate. It's like instant, you know, right away. You don't even have to think about it. It just comes out. Sometimes it's a physical, like, do you want pizza today? Your mouth starts salivating, you perk up like, ooh, pizza. Yeah. Like, it's there. There's no explanation for it. There's no way to reason it. It's a yes or no. You either do or you don't.
Okay.
It would be really helpful for day-to-day decisions where you can just step back and say, do I want this or not? No. Okay, that's it. You don't need to drill down further. You don't need to explain why you don't. You just don't. It's not meant for you that day. It's not lighting you up that day. It's fine. The next day, the answer might be. You may have a different answer the next day. You may say, one day someone says you want pizza or tacos, you say pizza. The next day you might say tacos, because that's what's like getting you excited and your stomach starts growling, or you feel like, oh no, I don't want to eat that. And it's very much like response in the moment. And then once you've had that response, you can't really go back to it until you present the same question or same offer to this again. So when using this for decisions, another challenge is you may listen to your mind and live the way you think you should instead of tuning into that sacral response, and you may doubt your body's response, especially with the open ajna that we mentioned and the head, the top triangle that you also have white. there may be doubt that comes about and says, well, no, you shouldn't eat that pizza today. You had chocolate milk earlier and you had a croissant at breakfast and you've been snacking all day and you didn't even go for a walk. You shouldn't eat that. That's not the right choice to make. We have to make decisions with our mind. It will try to talk you out of that body response and make you doubt it. So that's just something to be aware of when that mind chatter starts going off and make you doubt that response. Tell yourself to shut up. you know, some tips for support for the sacral. Your sacral loves to be asked questions, especially yes or no. This is what triggers that response. Henry is a pure generator, and this plays out like textbook example with him every day. I've started just asking him yes or no. Are you hungry? Yes or no. Okay. Do you want a PB&J? No. Okay. What about a quesadilla? Yes. Okay. So that's what I give him for lunch. And then he actually eats the whole lunch instead of me just making something, giving it to him, and then he doesn't eat it. Yes or no questions are a good way. Asking yourself yes or no questions are a good way to just get in touch with what that sacral response actually feels like. And having other people asking you yes or no questions helps too. And it's not something to think about. Just go with whatever the first answer is that comes right out, and that's coming from your sacral energy. Do what lights you up, and streamline or outsource what doesn't. The things that are not lighting you up are not what that sacral energy is meant to be spent on, and you're going to waste it and feel burnt out if you're using it on the things that don't light you up. So practice in business, especially practice working smarter, not harder. Just because you have the energy for something doesn't mean it's right for you. Some reflection questions for this center. Have I moved my body in a nourishing way today? Not necessarily have I exercised, but have I done something that physically brings me pleasure and feels good? Maybe it's dance, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's going for a walk, whatever it is. Have I done something creative today purely for the enjoyment of it? These are all focused on pleasure and experiencing pleasure. And the more little bits of pleasure you can have throughout the day, the stronger that sacral response and that energy will be for you. And have I experienced pleasure through my senses? Tasted something good, touched something, smelled something that brought pleasure. Affirmations. I trust that the right opportunities will come to me. All I have to do is respond.
Love that.
Rather than going out and trying to force things and make it happen, it'll come to you and you just decide, yes or no, is it right for me? The more emotional, heavier decisions, that's where you return to the solar plexus and write out the wave and give yourself time for clarity. But there are day-to-day decisions that you don't have to wait 2 to 3 days for, based on your sacral response in the moment, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, I do. I trust my intuition heavy now, like with practice though, with practicing this and the yes and no and testing out and validating and like, but it wasn't always that way. But
yeah.
It makes so much sense why it feels so solid now.
Yeah. I honor both my energy and my need for rest. I exhaust my battery daily. When you feel exhausted, when you feel that sacral energy is gone for the day and you need to rest, don't push through that and force yourself working.
When I hit my creative wall,
yeah,
like when I'm like, I'm done and I'm done painting, I'm done.
Yeah,
like
just stop
editing, like, because you're like, oh, I cannot push myself to edit anymore. I'm done.
Exactly. And I welcome pleasure into my life and seek out joy in my daily experiences. Little things, sitting by a window instead of where you normally sit, so you have the sunlight coming in that feels good and feels warm on you. Any little things where you can find that'll help nourish the sacred.
My house hoodie.
Yes, that's perfect. I thought of that in your tea that you do in the mornings before everyone else is awake. That's a perfect, let the pleasure in to start the day, get that sacral going right away in the day, and then you can be tuned into that response throughout the day.
Yeah, it feels so good to
Yeah. I don't have any of these centers defined, so I love hearing from people who do. Like, oh, is that what it feels like? Awesome. I don't have any of this. Let me check in here to see what else I have. Okay, so after sacral, I have a note to myself that says, after sacral, talk about the authorities and things to be aware of regarding conditioning. Okay, so this is where you may fall into conditioning and talk yourself out of decisions that are actually right for you based on writing out the wave or the sacral response. So you have 4 areas to be aware of, okay? The open head and ajna we talked about a little bit. The head may say, you have to use logic for decision making, not just what your gut tells you. That's silly. We're not going to follow that. The ajna may say, I don't understand how this whole riding out the wave thing works. Just make a decision and move on with it. Those are like conditioning areas. These two are also interesting. Your heart may say something like, this undefined heart would mean I don't have the willpower to enforce these boundaries around my time to make a decision. So I'm just going to decide and please everyone because I don't have the willpower to.
Oh my God. Okay.
Or the heart may say, I'm not worthy of that decision. I have to make a different decision. Like, I don't deserve to eat pizza. I've been unhealthy all day and haven't exercised. I'm going to force myself to eat the salad because I don't deserve the joy of the pizza. That could come from your open heart. And from your open spleen, this is something you've worked on, as you just said, but that's where we have our self-doubt and we don't trust our own inner guidance. So your spleen may say, no, you can't trust that gut response. You can't trust your emotions. You have to go back to your head and go back to the logic, because the spleen is also fear. And the spleen will say, we're afraid if you trust that gut response, it's going to be the wrong decision. So there's just a few things to be aware of, this little voice that may come up and try to talk you out of trusting these two authorities for your decisions.
That makes perfect sense.
I'm glad. I don't really know if you were to say, I don't understand, none of this makes sense, this isn't me at all, this isn't resonating, I don't know what I would do. I'd have to look up your birth certificate.
I was even going to ask you,
correct.
I was going to ask you if, because you know how before we even hit record, you're like, if I had any questions, and did you feel like you kind of felt my energy and knew me a little bit better before, like while going through all of this? Did you kind of like piece, or do you feel like when you're sitting in someone's energy that you just kind of get a better feel for them, or how does that?
Yeah, so for me, so this course, so a lot of the stuff in the overview, for example, this is like the technical stuff that we learned in class. Things like reflection questions and the affirmations, that's where I sit with your chart and try to meditate on there and ask my own guides, what does this person need to hear? What do they need to know? What is going to be most helpful for them? And that's where I did tweaking on some of these questions and affirmations. After doing that, I just felt like, okay, I need to put this in. I need to put this in.
And then does that have to do with the way that are you a reflector, right?
I'm a projector.
Projector.
With an open spleen, undefined spleen. And when we get to that, your spleen is the home of intuition. And when it's undefined, your intuition is strongest for other people. When it's defined, it's strongest for yourself. When it's undefined, it's strongest for other people. So I try to tap into that basically and tell me, what is it that this other person needs?
That is so cool.
Okay, so your root, let me make sure I don't have anything else in my notes here. Okay, that's it. All right, so root center. The root is both a motor center, like and a pressure center. It's the home of drive and ambition, and also stress and worry. And I included those two because in human design, nothing is good or bad. It's all just information that brings us awareness, and then we can choose what to do with it. Stress and worry is not inherently bad.
Right.
It gives us information about situations, about people, about relationships. It tells us when we're out of alignment, when things aren't flowing the way they should. For you with a defined root, you have a consistent way of processing and managing that stress. People with an undefined root don't necessarily have that. So they have to work on more conditioning around that. But I included that in here because stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. And when you're feeling stressed, I want you to be aware to not be judgmental of yourself when you feel stressed. Recognize that you're stressed and then try to reflect on what is causing the stress, like truly causing it, not just like, oh, I'm so stressed because I have all this to do. Okay, but why? Did you take on things that you're not, your heart's not, take on things that don't fill you up, like that kind of thing. Like the stress can inform you as to where things may be out of alignment in your other centers. The root is also where we feel the pressure to do, to adapt to the world, and to evolve. And defined roots have a very distinct on and off switch for their energy and clear needs for rest. So this center by other defined roots has been described to me as like having a light switch where it's on and you have the energy and you're going about your day and doing, and then it may be that at 2 p.m, the switch gets flipped and you suddenly are like, nope, I need to sit and rest. I can't do anything else. I just need to stop.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. That is literally like I can be 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like I'm done. Like
Yeah.
I'm
I need to go sit and watch TV. I'm not going to do this
like
anymore.
I'll have to like seriously, I'll need like a quick nap or something just to like.
Yeah.
And Ezra will even be like, I'll be like, okay, here's your food. It's nap time for me. Like, give me 15 minutes to like just recharge for a second. And he'll be like,
Yeah.
why do you need a nap? And I'm like, I just do. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's great that you're attuned to that already and aware that that's happening. Some people
But
don't.
not being judgmental and thinking I'm lazy because of it.
Yes,
Like,
you're not lazy. This is your body. That's how your body is designed. And all of these centers work together. It's entirely possible that when you have a very emotional day and you're riding that wave and dealing with a lot of emotionally heavy things, that your root is going to say, okay, stop. We need to rest. I'm protecting our emotional center. I'm flipping off the energy. We're going to go rest. It's all connected to each other. And you're designed to operate in a specific way. You're not being lazy. You're doing what you need at that moment.
yep.
You likely prefer to live life in a detailed, logical, and organized manner. You specifically, that comes from this connection right here, the root to that sacral energy. You like things detailed and organized, so you know.
And what was the first thing they said to you when we jumped onto? I was like, sorry, it's so messy back here. And
Yeah, yeah. No, I was like, that's really funny that you say that. That is something that could distract you from what you ultimately need.
Even when I would record podcast episodes with Shannon, I would be like, no, I need to go make the bed and like make
the
blue.
And
wait, shut the door.
Perfect example. I don't have this, and I'm currently sitting on like 3 sweaters that I haven't folded or put away. The bed's unmade. There's a pile of baby stuff next to me. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I can just keep on going.
And me, I'm like, I can't create until I've cleaned up. Or like, I can't, well, okay, you cook. So it's like having a clean kitchen before you cook kind of thing. Or like I know if all my chores are done that
I understand that logically. I don't care if the kitchen's dirty. I'll just go in and start cooking anyway. It doesn't bother me. I don't have that channel that you have that brings that up. Your challenges, you may not be fully attuned to your natural rhythms or be able to recognize when the root switches to off. It sounds like you are pretty good at recognizing that.
Or getting to that.
But really, really honor it when it comes up. Like allow yourself to take that break without feeling guilty or judgmental of yourself, because that's part of your natural rhythm. And know that the switch is going to flip back on again. You're not off forever. It's okay to stop and take a break. It's going to come back on again. And if you commit to things that are out of alignment, you may experience excess stress or burnout. That's related to the sacral. The stress can inform you. You feel super, super, super stressed. You're overwhelmed, so much to do. Is it because maybe things aren't in alignment? Like if you break those down 1 to 1, are you getting yeses or nos in your sacral response?
Okay.
Your to-do list. Tips for support: practice grounding exercises like connecting with nature, walking outside, sitting on the ground. Basically with this center is like directly connected to the root chakra, and things that you would do to nourish the root chakra also are nourishing this center in the same way. Plan life according to your unique pace. Don't commit when you're in off mode. Okay, that sounds like it resonates, so I'm just going to leave that there. Good. And bring attention to the physical world around you. When you start feeling stressed, this is another way to help to reground yourself. Like take a moment to look around the room, find 4 green things in the room, 4 yellow things in the room. Just bring your attention back to your physical space and reground your energy to like process that stress that's coming through. Reflection questions. Can you identify the on-off nature of your center? What does it feel like to be on and in the flow versus off and in rest mode? Knowing the difference between those so you can plan life according to your pace.
Yeah, I can tell when I'm in create versus consume mode.
And what are your favorite ways to recharge? Are there simple activities you can go to when the off switch is flipped? So this is, I was thinking of like,
Joint.
yes, anything, having like your go-tos where in the middle of the day when it hits and it turns off, you know what you need to do to give yourself that rest. You're not like feeling, oh, I need to rest, but I have all this I need to do. I'm just going to do all the stuff on my to-do list. Have a to-do list of restful activities that you can go to when you switch into that mode. And can you set boundaries around your rest time? Like really protect it. It's just as important as your in the flow productivity time. Affirmations. I'm in tune with my body's natural flow of energy. I will rest when I have the urge to rest and work when I have the urge to work. I'm gentle with myself and trust my own unique rhythm.
This is so anti hustle, hustle, hustle.
Yes, yes.
Discipline is doing it even when you don't feel like it. And that is never like, I understand you do have to do things when you don't feel like it,
Yeah,
like
of course.
on a basic level. But there are times where I'm like, I don't feel like I would be most efficient if I tried to push myself through this project right now,
Yeah.
or like doing things because I have to and not because it's naturally led to.
Or you may encounter that not self theme of frustration. You push yourself through to do it anyway, and then you get frustrated with what you're doing or frustrated with the results or the outcome because it's not in line with what your energy needs in that moment. Let's see, what do I have here? Okay, for defined root, a few other things to note. You as a defined root, you're in the minority. You're only about 30% of the population. So just because you have a fixed way of handling stress and pressure, and you have this on off, and you know when you can work and you know when you can rest, other people around you may not. They may not be able to process stress the same way you. They may actually be amplifying the stress that you're feeling. So just be aware of that more than anything, because 70% of the population has the center undefined. There's a good chance you're going to be around people in your daily life that don't have what you have here. And I thought of this one specifically with homeschooling and with the two kids. Think of ways to incentivize or motivate that don't involve pressure. Like this needs to be done now. This needs to be done by a certain time. That pressure to do can be really overwhelming for someone that has the center undefined. So finding other ways to motivate would be like the path of.
I would be curious if Ezra's is undefined, because I noticed a difference between, okay, now it's time to do worksheets and blah, 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 versus let's turn it into a game and then it's competitive.
It's a different way of motivating. Yeah.
And it's like an hour can fly by and he's like, doesn't say he's bored once, you know?
Right. Yeah. So that's just something to be aware of. I thought of it specifically with, like I said, with homeschooling, just know there may be other ways to motivate them, especially if they don't have a defined root and they don't have their own natural rhythm.
Now I want to see what everybody has.
And also related to this, that internal pressure, like I was saying, with people with these undefined centers will amplify it. So if you're being particularly hard on yourself, if you're pressuring yourself to get things done when you don't have the energy for it, if you're internally putting this pressure on yourself, they're going to feel that and then amplify it within themselves as well.
Dang, okay.
Be aware that dynamic is going to be at play, whether you're aware of it or not. I think it's better to be aware of it so you can be more in control of it, you know?
Okay. This is so.
And then we haven't gotten to your undefined heart yet, but we're coming up to that. So I just want to add in here with a defined root and an undefined heart, you're not designed to function by making a lot of commitments and always sticking through with all of those commitments. The more you're in the flow of that root energy and understand your own pace and your own on-off switch, you can better understand how much time you personally need to get things done, and then what commitments you can actually make and take on that aren't going to drain you. And it's the combination of those two centers. You're just not meant to commit to a lot of things. You're not. You can take some things off your plate. You can be attentive to some things, like maybe I'll do it, maybe not. I'm not going to fully commit to it, and that's okay. Like give yourself permission to not do it if you need to, if you're in that off switch.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
1000%. Yep.
Okay. Defined identity center. This was a really cool one for me to read because I don't have it. And I think it's really fascinating in people that do. The identity center, it's sometimes also called the G center. I prefer using identity center because G center just means nothing to me. It's like a letter. I like, it's your identity.
The other G spot.
Yeah, every time I hear G center, I think, no, I like identity because it's sometimes also called the seat of the soul. It's the home of the energy that tells us, who am I and where am I going in life? That direction, basically.
North Node. Okay.
That's why identity to me makes so much more sense as the name of this center. It's also where we find our magnetism. So the way it's explained is because it's shared with the heart chakra, that electromagnetic field around the heart is what's drawing things into you. And when you have a defined, consistent way of processing that, it's like a magnet. It'll just keep pulling and pulling and pulling to you. So you can tap into your sacral response and know, do I want this or not? Yes. Okay, I'm going to take it. Do I not? All right, go on. You're for someone else. But you have that like charge that's going to be drawing in opportunities and people to you, which is why all you need to do is respond. You don't have to go out and initiate and force things. It'll come to you.
It doesn't work out when things are forced for me, like anything, projects, work, people, friendship, like whenever it's like, you should do this or you should connect with this person.
It's not, you're going to end up frustrated. Yeah. Really. It's also the home of boundaries, knowing, who am I? What's my responsibility? What's your responsibility? Where do my responsibilities end and yours begin? Like, this is all kind of placed in that identity center. So your strengths in the center, which I think are so awesome, you have a fixed and reliable sense of self. You know who you are, where you're going, and you don't change that for other people. I think that's really cool. You also set the tone. For people with an undefined identity center like me, we take in and amplify your energy. So the more you love yourself, the more you empower yourself, the more you allow those things to just come to you that are meant for you, the more permission you're giving others to do that as well without even realizing that you're doing it.
Cool.
It is. See, this is a cool area, I think.
Really cool.
So your challenges with this area, because so much of your expression and your creativity and what you manifest into the world is connected to who you are and reflection of who you are, sometimes criticism can be really hard to take. Be open to criticism, but be very mindful of when you want it and who it's coming from. Like, criticism is a good thing and can be helpful if it's coming from the people that you trust and that whose opinions you value, and you're at a place where you're open to receiving it. If it's just offered, it can be really hard, and you may find yourself taking it personally, even if it's not meant personally. It's natural to want to be the best version of yourself. Totally natural for people with an identity center. Just be aware, because you also have an open heart center, which is where our feelings of self-worth and value come from. Be mindful that that desire to be the best version of yourself is coming from a foundation of knowing you're already good enough. You're already enough. You don't have to prove anything. You just want to be the best you can. Not, I need to be this one so I can prove I'm worthy of love, or I can prove I'm worthy of these opportunities, or I'm worthy of these relationships. You're good enough as you are. You want to be your best, good for you. That's like the cherry on top of the sundae. But you don't do it. The defined identity center tips for support. Embrace the need to express yourself and your experience, your perspective. Your identity center is connected directly to your throat. So you have a need, like an actual need to express yourself.
In astrology, my third house, which is my house of communication, is like, it's got like a big, huge, hold on, Saturn. So it's like huge energy in my third house about communication. And there's like Saturn and Pluto. So it's like, it'll be one of my biggest life challenges, but it'll also be one of the things that, when in alignment, it actually helps, and it has to do with helping and healing others.
Yes. Expressing your personal experiences, your perspectives, what you've gone through and learned from, getting that out and actually speaking it is helping others. That's what you're giving the world. That's the energy coming out that you're giving to us. That's what you've learned. Give yourself time to just speak to a friend, Maybe it's a voice recording, just let it come out. That energy wants to come out, and you have motors connected directly to your throat. So this energy is constantly moving to your throat and it wants to get out, specifically energy and expressions related to your personal experiences and perspective and you and who you are, your identity and your direction. Just let it come. I love that you're podcasting for partly for this reason. Also because, little side note with your 5 line, the 5 is your subconscious, your unconscious line. It's what's projected onto you. You are essentially like the general that comes in and can solve a problem or solve a crisis. And then you just go back and let the troops continue on once that problem is solved. It's an unconscious thing that's there, whether you're aware of it or not. And being able to, so your sphere of influence as a 5 is more your extended network and strangers. That's who you're going to have the greatest impact on. Versus a 4 line, their greatest impact is on their immediate network and their tribe. With a 5, your greatest impact is more extended and like the greater community, the collective. I love that you're podcasting for this because it's an opportunity for you to get out your experience, your perspective, to just speak it, to get it out there. And with your 5 line, it's going out and helping people that you're not even aware that it's going to and helping.
My North Node, which is your life soul purpose, is in my 11th house, which is my house for community. So literally my soul purpose is in community. Like, oh, that is wild how that, and it's in Gemini, which Gemini is a communication energy. Holy shit.
It's like this inner knowing that you have inside of you just wants to get out and
yeah. That's what it feels like.
Share with everyone else this inner wisdom that you have. You have to just let it out. And don't try to put any logic behind it or structure. Like, let yourself just speak stream of conscious. You may surprise yourself, but what comes out, you may not even know ahead of time what it is that's going to be coming out. But whatever it is, it just needs to get out. Just let it go.
Honestly, like I've been with podcasting, I've been wanting to take a different direction just because for me it was like I've been wondering, like, would people even want to listen if I talked by myself, like to myself for this long of time? Like, would I even have enough to say? You know, like the getting in my head up here about that. But my gut is saying, yes, girl, do it, because you can actually like hit a topic and go on a rant.
Yeah.
In a way, so many ways.
Do it. So with this center being connected to your sacral as well, it's super important, super, even more so for you than anyone else, that the work that you're doing is a reflection of who you are. It needs to be an expression of who you are. Don't overthink it. Don't try to analyze like, well, is this really in line with the direction? Just trust that gut sacral response will keep you on the path you need to be so that the work you're doing reflects who you are.
And you know what my intention for this year was? Like, I want to get paid for being me. I just want to get paid for being me. Yeah. I just want to be myself. I just want to be myself. I'm tired of being everybody else. I'm tired of wearing a costume for this, that, and the other. I just want to do what I want to do and just be me and get paid well for it, but also help people. Like, that's literally all I want to do.
Do it and you will. Do you, be you, it will all happen. Just respond to what lights you up. And if you're responding to what lights you up and you're allowing yourself to express who you are within that and you're sharing it with others, you're like perfectly in alignment with what you should be doing. You will just innately, if you're listening to that sacral response to the opportunities that come, you will be responding to the opportunities that are meant for you. As long as you don't shush it, you listen to it when it says yes, you will be like on the path you're meant to be on.
Freaking dope. Okay. I'm super excited.
True. So some reflection questions. Do you feel a strong sense of identity? Has there been a time when fear or shame kept you from expressing your authentic or true self?
Yeah.
And also, who are you? Who are you? Write down like who you are, not who you want to be or who you should be, just who you are in this moment. What words come to mind? Are there parts of your identity you want to lean in more? Are there parts that you're ready to release? Just kind of get clear on that so that when opportunities arise and you have that response, you can have that like secondary confidence validation. Like, I'm clear on who I am and I'm responding. This is in alignment. It is, and I'm just going to go for it.
Okay.
Affirmations. I embrace my true self and allow my unique light to shine. You remember, you're a generator. You're here to be a light, and you have a very unique and specific and defined light that we need you to share. Like you're being selfish if you don't share it, frankly. I know who I am, and I release identities that no longer serve me. I draw in love towards myself and those around me. That magnet, it's going to bring in the people, it's going to bring in the opportunities, the relationships that are right for you. They'll be drawn, especially with this fixed center. It's a really strong energy. I change direction when I choose to. I don't allow others to push me off course.
Yes.
Good. All right. Now your throat, what it's all connected to. Your throat is like town square, like city hall. All the energy in the body is trying to make its way to the throat. And you have, remember, the smooth, continuous flow of energy all the way up to the throat. So all of this is working this way there. It wants to be expressed. Everything that we've just talked about, your emotional awareness and wisdom that comes from that center, the things that light you up, who you are, all of it ultimately wants to be expressed through your defined throat. It's the only manifestation center. And by manifestation, I mean it in like the literal terms, like it's the only place where what's inside can get out into the physical world.
Yeah.
The energy within us is transformed to make things happen in the physical world. That is the one and only place.
It goes from that. Yes, I totally, okay. That makes sense.
So your strengths as a defined throat, you have a specific and fixed way of speaking, communicating, and acting in the world. If you were to write something anonymously, people who know you and know your way of speaking and thinking would know that it was written by you. That's one way that I like to explain it.
I thought yesterday I was listening to something and I literally had the idea of writing something under a different name just yesterday of like, I should write a book about this, like, but not put my name on it, but let it be like ghostwritten.
That's fine.
So
yeah.
Fine.
And you have consistent access to the energy to speak, but use your strategy and authority, your emotional awareness and that sacral response to know when and what to say. You may, if you feel like you just need to talk, but there's not necessarily anyone that needs to hear it, you can do a little voice recording for yourself and get it out that way. And then when your authority, either your emotional awareness or your sacral response is telling you this actually needs to get out for other people to hear, then get it out for other people.
Oh, got it. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
No, tune into that inner knowing to know when and what to say.
Okay.
Challenge, potential to talk too much and do too much, literally giving yourself away. All that energy inside, you're just giving it away. So be aware of that. And again, go back to that strategy and authority to know when. Defined throat tips for support. Know that you don't have to act on every idea. You may feel the pressure to act on some ideas that come up because of that defined root, but know that you don't have to, every idea that comes doesn't have to be spoken out. Use your authority to know when it's right for it to come out.
I get so many ideas all day long.
So one thing to do is just write them down. As they come up, just write them down. Don't attach anything to them, any outcomes, just write them down. And then come back to them a day or two later when the emotional, like, ooh, excitement is gone, and tune into that sacral response. Yes or no, do I want to do this idea? Yes or no, do I want to do this one? And then kind of pare it down from there. Let yourself be in the flow without waiting or expecting others to keep up. You have all this like smooth energy just trying to come out. Let yourself do it and understand other people may not be in the same flow as you. They may not be able to keep up for you. That's okay. You do what you need to do and be in your own flow. And be mindful of your overall energy output. How much do you really have to give, especially in terms of like speaking and getting that, like, just this talking is a release of all that energy that's inside. And if you're just talking and talking and talking and carrying on, you're letting out that energy that could be focused on something else if in the moment it's not actually right for you to be talking with that person or about that thing. You know what I mean?
That makes total sense.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yep.
So some reflection questions. Can you give yourself permission to step into your unique voice? What wounds or conditioning might be holding you back? You, with an open heart, may say, I'm not good enough to talk about the subject. You may, with
like
open
hits that too.
Yep. You may, with the open head and the undefined ajna say, I don't actually know enough about this. You may doubt your knowledge, doubt whether you're actually an authority able to speak on something. Even conditioning around, I haven't studied this long enough, so how could I be a master to teach it? That's more conditioning that would keep you from being able to speak when you actually should be. And can you honor voices other than your own, or use your voice to amplify others? Not everyone has this area defined, and you have a very fixed way of processing this energy and a clear way of communicating, and you can use that to empower others as well.
Okay.
Affirmations. I speak with responsibility and I know the source of my voice. I use my voice to invite others to speak and share their experiences.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's through interview guests on your podcast and things like that.
And just, even just amplify others' stories or,
And I wait for the right people who value my words.
Oh my God, yes. Okay.
Let's see if I have anything on from here real quick before we move on. Identity Center. Oh, I have this funny note with the Identity Center that I missed. I forgot to tell you. I have a note in here that says, by the way, I started working on this center at 3:44 p.m. I just picked up my computer to start working on it, and it was 3:44.
Oh, I love that.
It's so funny. It's Leo's fixed sense of self and purpose, and it's 3:44 p.m.
That's absolutely like Spirit's way of like, hey.
Yeah, like here's a little validation. This is what you need to be telling her right now. Okay, undefined heart. This is a big one for conditioning. I didn't go crazy into detail with it because we talked about it a little bit with our messaging on through Instagram, but there are some points that I want to touch on and some things to really reflect on. So the heart center is the home of willpower, core desires, self-worth, business dealings, money, wealth, competition, and material desires. That all kind of lives in the heart center. The heart center only has 4 channels. Like, it's considered a small center, but they are extremely powerful. And this is the main source of conditioning for people with an undefined heart. This is where it happens in issues of worth and value and what you have to give to the world.
In conditioning, like what we're taught to believe, or what we've been believing just because, like.
Exactly. What you like I have to go to college and have a degree, or I'm not smart enough to talk about a subject. I'm not worthy because I didn't go to college and officially study it. That's like cultural conditioning that tells us you have to be an authority. You have to study and learn this professionally. So we can internalize that and say, well, I'm not good enough to speak in this. I have nothing of value to give. I'm not worthy to speak about this because I didn't go through this formal process of training, which is what our culture has conditioned us to believe you need to do to master.
I feel that way. Like every time I have ever applied for a job that was like, you need a bachelor's degree. And I'm like, well, I dropped out so I can serve my clients better.
You don't. You're probably much more qualified than someone who does have it, but it's like societal. It could be family conditioning, like you need to prove you're good enough for your parents' love and affection. You need to be a certain way and prove you're good enough as a daughter, good enough as a mother, good enough as a wife. Like that it tends to come into this center especially. And 70% of the world has this area undefined. So it's a huge conditioning. But all of our messaging, cultural messaging, is defined heart energy. It's be the best and be competitive and make the deal and do the negotiation, especially around business stuff. That's not what an undefined heart is meant to do. Competition, you're not here to compete with other people. You're here to live it on your own terms, not play that game and play that.
I hate competing like that. Like, I don't want to be.
It doesn't feel good for people.
Yeah. Heart. It doesn't feel good to win, and it doesn't feel good to lose, you know?
Yep. It's not what you're meant to do, but that's so much of our cultural conditioning and messaging is around this: be competitive, be the best, do better than this other person, be better than them, keeping up with the Joneses, make this deal, have all these material examples of your success, have a certain house, certain car, do this, do that. That's not necessarily how 70% of the world is supposed to even operate, you know?
It's crazy.
Your strengths. You're able to offer an objective viewpoint in all matters of the heart center. So all of these things, desires, worth, business, dealing, competition, you can take a very objective viewpoint for other people. You're incredibly wise about what has value and what doesn't, what transactions or business deals are worth pursuing, what people are trustworthy and will keep their promises. And you are here to be the coach, not the player. So you're very wise about these areas and can help other people see for them what has value, what doesn't, who's going to be reliable, who's not, what business opportunities they should pursue, what should they not. But you're not here to play that game yourself. It's like you're watching soccer, the people are running around, you're coaching them and helping them get the win, but you're not the one on the field actually doing it, if that makes sense.
Dude, that makes so much sense. I definitely resonate with all of that.
So some challenges, you may get caught up in trying to prove yourself, proving your worth.
Because in my head, it's telling me you have to be the player and the most successful player in order to coach.
You have to be the one out there scoring all the points, or you're not good enough to actually coach the other people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dude, this all ties in. Okay.
May not have the willpower to enforce boundaries. And that also ties back into worth. Like, I'm not worthy of these boundaries, so I just don't have the energy to enforce them because I don't think I deserve to have them. Like,
wow. Okay.
You may undervalue or downplay your own abilities or achievements, and you may undercharge in business.
Stephanie's
because you tie your worth to what you do instead of accepting that you are worthy already. There may be a certain monetary value to services you provide, but they have nothing to do with your own self-worth and what you do, what you produce. It has nothing to do with your own internal worth. But we get really caught up in thinking like, well, I'm not good enough to actually charge that much. Yeah, you are. You are. It's okay. And you deserve it, and you deserve to earn whatever it is that you want to charge.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay, so some tips for support. Scale back your busy time and build in periods of rest to your schedule. Similar theme here. It's a theme. Honor the rest. Rest time is just as important and necessary as the time when you're being productive. You cannot be productive if you don't rest. So you have to like honor that and let yourself have it, because you don't have the willpower to follow through with commitments when your heart's not in them, literally not in them, because you have that undefined center. Let go of the need to compare or compete with others. You're here to do it your way. You're not here to play that game. You're the coach that's going to see your own way of doing it and help get others through it as well. Accept praise when it comes to you without feeling the need to downplay it. If someone pays you a compliment, we like instinctively, it's like we're culturally conditioned to think we're not good enough to receive compliments. And no matter what, it's like, oh, your hair looks really good today. Oh, I didn't even wash it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're immediately downplaying the compliment. Just say thank you. That's
it.
Accept it and say thank you. It's true. I do deserve that. I'm worthy of that. Thank you. That's it.
Damn.
Reflection questions. In what ways are you trying to prove yourself? Be as specific as possible in your relationships, career, parenting, in your spiritual growth. I added this personal spiritual growth specifically because even in the undefined heart center, we can sometimes feel like I'm not spiritually evolved enough to be able to speak on these topics and help other people out.
Right.
I haven't meditated all week, so therefore who am I to tell someone else that there's benefits to meditation when I'm not even doing it myself? I need to do it more. I need to be better at this. I need to do in order to be good enough, instead of just accepting wherever you are on that path, that is where you need to be, and that's enough. So I put spiritual in there specifically for you because of what you do with mediumship and with the podcast and all of that. Wherever you are on there's like a competition within the spiritual community, even of like, you need to be even more involved. You need to be at the highest vibration. Like sometimes you're on a low vibration day, and that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not qualified to tell other people what are things to do to help raise their vibrations. You know, it's okay. And also, what does proving yourself look like for you in these ways that you're trying to prove yourself? What does that actually look like? How does that come out for you? And where can you stop doing that? Basically, you know, I release the need to prove myself is the first one I put on there. I'm worthy because I am. You don't have to do anything to earn it. You are. My worth is not determined by my work, and I have value because I am human. That's it. That's all you need. What makes you worthy to exist on this planet? You're a human being. That's it. You don't have to prove anything else. Undefined spleen. This one we talked about a lot. So I didn't spend too much time on it because this was the main one that we talked about over messaging. But the splenic center, our oldest form of awareness, it's responsible for our survival. It tells us what's good for us, what's not good for us. It's the home of our intuition, instinct, body awareness, and that primal fear of survival, like having your basic survival needs met. The fear of that lies in the spleen. The spleen's awareness, it's another awareness center. Like the solar plexus is emotional awareness. The spleen's awareness is like, it's the inner knowing. It's the in the moment hit of information. And if you ignore it in that moment, it's not going to come back. Like you've got to be tuned into it and listening to it in that moment. So for you with an undefined spleen, you have the ability for incredible intuitive awareness, especially about other people. And I thought this was really interesting. A lot of healers and energy workers have undefined spleens.
That makes so much sense.
A lot of times people with an undefined spleen can have stronger intuitive hits about someone with a defined spleen than that person even has about themselves.
I can see that.
You're taking in their defined energy and amplifying it and getting an even stronger hit for them than what they're getting.
That makes sense.
So your challenge is differentiating fear from intuition.
Okay.
If in the moment something tells you, no, I shouldn't really do that, is it coming from a place of intuition and something telling you this to protect yourself? Or is it a fear that's not necessarily based in the reality of the moment? Fear, intuition is more of like a gentle, a loving, a caring for you kind of voice. And fear is more judgmental, harsher. It's kind of like, so the pandemic is over and people invite you out to go to wherever, whatever social event is going on, but something inside you says, I really just want to rest. My root's in the off switch. I'm not feeling it. I don't want to go out right now. I really just want to rest. Your intuition might step in and say, but it's really good for you to be around other people. You could take in that energy and maybe it's a good thing to like honor this invitation right now and go for it. Or fear could say, if you don't go now, they're not going to invite you out to anything ever again. You're going to be that community. See, there's a difference. There's like a loving way of doing it, and you're a bad person if you don't do that kind of thing. So understanding the difference between the two and knowing when fear is not a bad thing. Fear informs us, fear protects us, fear helps us in a lot of ways. Allowing that fear to be there and then moving through it and acting anyway when it's not intuition that's keeping you, it's fear that's holding you. If it's your intuition telling you don't do something, listen to that. If it's fear telling you don't do something and that's not grounded in the reality of the moment, allow the fear to be there, but move through it and do the thing you should be doing anyway.
Okay.
Learning to tell the difference between those two can sometimes be challenging. It is for me, especially with this area undefined. You may have a false sense of security in people with defined spleens because it's the home of that primal fear of survival. And we don't have a consistent energy telling us everything's okay, our survival needs are cared for. Being around people who do have that energy can feel like a security blanket, basically, like keeping us safe. And understanding that that's a false sense of security. That's coming from someone else's energy, not yours. Okay. I think you said Sam had a defined spleen. I don't remember, but I'd be really curious to see if he does, because that just being in that energy and then being away from it, you can feel a loss of that security without even realizing intellectually that that's what it is that's missing when you're away. You can hold on because of this fear and this need for security. You can hold on to things, relationships, places, people that are no longer good for you.
Okay.
And then with you specifically, I wrote this challenge. You may feel an internal struggle between your 2 line wanting to be alone and wanting to be completely isolated, and that isolation evoking those survival fears because you don't have consistent energy telling you you're safe, it's okay.
Damn.
So that could be like an internal thing going on just to be aware of. Like you may feel like I really want to be alone and go create and paint, and then you get in the room and you're like, no, but I want people around me because now I don't feel secure, that you could have that struggle going on. So tips for support: pay attention to your physical needs rather than ignoring them. This is specifically related to your body. Like a lot of our body awareness is in the spleen, our immune system, our health, a lot of that, the awareness of that lies in the spleen. So paying attention to your physical needs, like my throat is really parched and dry right now and I need water. Don't ignore that and just keep going anyway, like stop and get a drink of water, you know? And be mindful of things that induce stress or fear, like the news, horror movies. It's not that those things are necessarily bad for you. Some people want to feel that. And especially for someone like you who seeks out emotional experiences, you may want to actually feel that fear. Just know that it's coming from this outside source. It's not a fear you actually need to act on or move on. You are not actually threatened. It's this experience that's bringing it on.
This is so funny. Like so many, I can't wait to rewatch this so I can like.
Yeah, it's long and let it all
Yeah.
like synthesize. Yeah, yeah. Let me check my notes here because I definitely had stuff about undefined spleen to share with you. Undefined spleens need a heightened sense of awareness regarding your own physical health. Really tune into your body and your own physical health, because it's really easy to think that hits or things that are coming in may be related to other people not feeling well or being sick, or just brush it off. It's like, oh, it's not a cold, I'm just stressed, I just need to sleep. But it may actually be you physically ill. Like, just pay attention to that and allow yourself extra time to recover from illness as well, to make sure you're fully recovered before getting back out, because you could be more susceptible to getting sick again if you don't give yourself that extra time.
Okay.
So some reflection questions. What is my relationship with fear? When I experience it, what meaning do I give it? Do you see it as a tool that can be helpful and give you information? Do you see it as something to be ashamed of and you should ignore the fear and just be brave, like our cultural conditioning tells us? Just reflect on that, think about that. And how can I tell the difference between my fear and my intuition? Reflect on a time in your life when you let go of something that wasn't serving you. How did that feel? A lot of times it feels good, right? But we fear, that fear tells us not to let go of it because you think you need it for some reason, and you forget, no, it actually feels better when I let go of it. So kind of giving yourself time to reflect on that and write it out and acknowledge, like, it's good to let go of things. This is what I actually want to do, can make it a little bit easier to release. And reflect on a time in your life when you trusted your inner guidance, which you do a lot. How did it feel and what was the outcome? This is about developing that self-trust, really. Yeah. Knowing that you can trust yourself to act even in the face of fear. You can trust yourself to let go of things when you need to. And your affirmations: I know my fears serve a purpose, but I'm not controlled by them. I cherish my time with myself and know that I am safe and secure. And I release what no longer serves me. Undefined head. So these last two, the head and the ajna, are pretty straightforward energies. So we're wrapping up, just so you know. We're not going to go on forever and ever.
No. This is it. Totally. I'm like,
you have an undefined head. You actually have an open head, what we call. You have an open head center, or crown center, it's sometimes called. So if we'll go all the way back up here to your chart. You see how there's, this little black line hang off the ajna? That's called the hanging gate. When there's a transit or a person that comes by that has this, it'll connect it and bridge that gap. Up here on your head, there are no hanging gates. It would take multiple transits or people to make connections here. This is wide open, which means it's even more susceptible to conditioning, but also even more potential for wisdom in that area.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, these hanging gates are they're like little feelers out there looking for people to connect to, for transits, for energy to connect to activate those channels. And the head doesn't have any of those. It's just open and taking everything in. So let's go back down here. Undefined head. Here we go. So the head center, also known as the crown center, is the home of our inspiration and ideas. With you with an open head, you're wide open to ideas and inspirations from all different directions, but know that not every idea is necessarily for you. Maybe you can share it and someone else can act on it. It's not necessarily meant for you to act on. Being wide open up there, you're going to get all kinds of inspiration and stuff coming in. use your sacral response and your emotional authority to decide which ones you actually are meant to act on, you know, and others put out there for other people to do. Maybe they're meant to come to you and be expressed so someone else can actually act on it. It's not necessarily yours to act on every time. The head is also a pressure center, and it's the pressure to know, to think, to make sense of the world, to answer questions, to find certainty in your answers. It's an awareness center without a motor. So it can tell us, we got to figure this out. We got to know this answer. We got to, or sorry, that should be, it's a pressure center without a motor. It can pressure you to say, we got to figure this out. We got to find the answer. We got to find the answer. But it can't actually do anything unless one of the other centers is motivated to act on that. Otherwise, it's just all stuck up here, just all in your head.
Just the backseat driver. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It can help us make sense of things, but it cannot drive us into action. Yes. It's there, it's hanging out in the car as a passenger. It's not actually in control. So your strengths with an open head, you're open to ideas and inspiration from all different directions. You can gain a lot of clarity about which matters and topics are useful and which are useless with that coming in. And you can reflect back, this is really key, a defined head's thinking to help them work through their own mental process. So you would be a great sounding board for someone else who has a defined head and is trying to work through their process. You just repeat back to them, what I hear you saying is blah, 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 and then they can further fine tune and clarify what it is that they're thinking. Your challenges, you can take on the worries of others or get caught up trying to answer their questions. Can get lost in your mind thinking about things that don't necessarily matter and can become overwhelmed by doubt or confusion. So there's the pressure to know, the pressure to answer the questions. And with your head being completely open, you can get really caught up trying to find the answers to those questions, trying to solve all these mysteries and solve all these problems that answer life's big questions when they're not necessarily yours to answer. That's not what your energy is meant to be spent on. You tap into your decision-making authorities to figure out which are the questions you should be pursuing and answering, and which ones just let them be and let them go for someone else to worry about. So some tips for support: be mindful of taking premature action or rushing decisions. This is what we talked about earlier. The head might step in and say, I just want to know what the answer is. Just give them an answer so we know. Resist that urge and give yourself like the time to actually make a decision in line with your authorities. Empty out your brain through journaling, physical movement, and just brain dumps. Talking it out when no one is around is also good for defined throats. If you find yourself like really caught up in your head and just thinking about these things and you just need to get it out, talk to yourself, just get it out, release that energy, and then it's cleared out of your head and you can move on. It's like actually emptying it out. Like what's in here needs to come out into the physical world, and then I can move on.
Yeah.
Observe your thoughts. Let them swirl around and like swim in that curiosity without being attached to an outcome and actually finding an answer to things. These thoughts can be your source of inspiration. They can be your source of ideas in some ways, as long as there's not an attachment to, I must find the answer to them when they're not yours to answer. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Reflection questions. Am I rushing to a decision because I need to know it's decided? And do I spend too much time thinking about things that don't matter? Is it distracting me from what matters? Distraction and inspiration to me are like two sides of the same coin. Are these things, these questions swirling around in your head, distracting you from what matters or leading you to inspiration for your next thing? Kind of, you have to reflect and figure that out. Affirmations. I embrace curiosity for curiosity's sake. I'm not attached to an outcome or an answer. Know where my questions are coming from. The right answers will come to me at the right time. I trust in the flow and timing of the universe. Now the head and the ajna work together, so that I keep them for last and do them back to back because they work together a lot. The ajna is the home of conceptualization, and it's where we process all the questions and ideas and things that come up in the head, come down into the ajna for processing. It's like the computer that processes what we put in. It's the seat of consciousness, and it helps us make sense of the world, and it's cognitive awareness. Okay. So your strengths with having this area undefined, you have an open and flexible mind. You're able to see which ideas have value and which don't. You're not attached to a fixed way of thinking, and your identity is not wrapped up in your thoughts. You are not, I think, therefore I am. Okay. You can see every side to a situation. You can argue every side to a situation, which is why your mind is not a good decision-making authority, because you could see every possible decision and see the pros and cons to every one. And you're probably good with meditation. You have moments where that energy is fully released and you can be at peace and you can have a quiet mind. And because that's a natural state for you, you can tap into that natural state when you're meditating as well and open up to receive whatever else may come in. People with a defined ajna, I have this defined, it's really, really, really hard to meditate. It's like constant chatter, and shutting it down and being quiet to hear other messages, whatever, is really, really hard to do when you have this defined. When it's undefined, it's a natural state to be empty, basically, to be open to receiving.
So much sense. Like even today, I went to go sit down and start a new meditation book that my coworker got me. And day one's just about breathing. And I go outside to sit and meditate, and I clear out my mind and everything. And the fucking neighbor's playing Feliz Navidad.
Oh,
and
God.
I'm like, oh my God, stop. Like, and it's the one song I hate like the worst. So that was what was filling my mind, was externally somebody else was like, and it was like, okay, now what do I do? Because I'm aware that it's happening. I'm breathing.
I have the opposite problem being defined. I can't do meditations that are just focused on breathing, because then it's like I'm doing the breathing and I'm listening to it, but I'm also going, okay, but then I need to do this, and this is on my to-do list, and I need to figure out where I can go for this. And it's just, it has to be a specific type of meditation where it's like repeating a mantra, something that engages the mind in a way. That's the only kind I can really do. But yeah, you can do it. You can empty it out, and then you're like this empty vessel ready to receive whatever inspiration, messaging, everything that comes in.
Which makes sense with like mediumship and being able to channel. And
yeah, totally. And connected with your undefined spleen, where you're getting messages for other people and stuff as well.
So
your challenge is you can become obsessed with finding certainty, with finding what we talked about earlier with decisions. You may feel like you want to be absolutely certain it's the right decision for you. The only way to have that is really through clarity, using your decision-making authorities. You're never going to have complete certainty about things. And rather than obsessing about that, become comfortable with uncertainty. You may be uncomfortable or anxious sharing what you know. A lot of times people with an undefined ajna doubt their own knowledge, their own intellect. Down here, may doubt your own intellect, your own wisdom. Because you're always taking in so much from other people, you may doubt what's actually yours.
Yeah.
Trust in yourself and in your other centers and authorities to tell you, yes, I am confident, I am knowledgeable, I have wisdom that can be shared. Tips for support: use your authority to guide your path. Like I just said, don't try to logic or rationalize your way through decisions, because you could decide anyway. You could see the pros and cons of every possible outcome, and you could see benefits to every possible answer. That's not the best way to make a decision, because then how do you know what's actually for you?
You're right.
Take time to shut down and let your mind rest. There may be times for you where you have the physical energy to be doing things, but your mind needs to rest. Maybe that's a time when you go for a hike, or when you're out in nature, when you're allowing yourself to be physical, but not mentally stimulating yourself. There may be times when you need both, when you need to shut down your mind and physical, and you need to let rest come in for both of those. Just be aware. It may feel different. Your physical needs for rest and your mental needs for rest may not always align. So be aware. Sometimes you may need one over the other. Explore your ideas, but know that you don't have to act on all of them. That's like what we talked about. Some inspiration ideas are for you, some are not. So the idea of, or the process of making a list, all the things that come up, the ideas that come up, make a list.
And I love it.
Yeah, and then just come back to it a day or two later and use that sacral response, asking yourself, yes or no, do I want this, to figure out which ideas are actually for you and that you want to act on. Some reflection questions: explore your relationship with anxiety. Do you have a healthy way of releasing it? Is it coming from a reasonable place, or is it someone else's mental energy? Defined ajnas like me have a really hard time with anxiety, and you as an undefined can pick up on that and amplify it.
Yep.
You may be experiencing anxiety that has nothing to do with you or your life. It's someone else's that you're picking up on.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
explore what that feels like, and how, when you need to release it as someone else's, and when it's anxiety that's yours that's trying to inform you of something. And explore your relationship with uncertainty. Can you allow it to be without feeling pressure to find answers and to find that certainty? Be comfortable. So one of the affirmations, I'm comfortable with uncertainty and I release the pressure to know. And I trust that answers will come in due time. That's it. Thank you. You're badass.
That was so amazing, Stephanie. That is so helpful.
That went even longer than the hour and a half that I planned.
Nope,
But
sorry.
I think it was, it's really hard for me to pare this down and say this is more important over this, because it all works together. It all
I can totally see how it ties in.
It's
and
like
then what I'll probably do is like, I'm going to sit with it, rewatch, look through the reflection questions, and
yeah,
then
I'm going to send you this PDF too, so you'll have all these slides to look back.
I am so grateful. This is awesome, and it's very validating in terms of like tying into my birth chart and just how important career and my mission to career and community and the work that I do in this lifetime is like huge in the focus of this, and realizing that my journey doesn't have to look like somebody else's, because in early life it's like you have to go to college and you have to do this and you have to do this, and then this is what your life is supposed to look like. And then, you know, at this point, you know, now hearing, well, you're almost, dude, you're almost 40 now, and now you should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing this, and like constantly people always telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it's like, that's not what, like, I don't feel like my life is anything like your life, or I don't feel like it has to look like yours at all. Like, it's very validating to know that my way of thinking isn't wrong per se. It's just, that's how I feel like I'm looking at myself on paper. So
you're here to do life your own way, not someone else's pre-prescribed way.
So I appreciate you. Carol, hold on. Oh, let me stop.